What if Captain Archer's story didn't end with Enterprise? Today we're diving into the newly revealed pitch for Star Trek United, a political drama with espionage, family intrigue, and even ties to the Romulan War. Could this be the next great Star Trek series? Let's explore. Well, hey everyone, I'm Nick and welcome back to Sci-Fanatics. Well, about a month or so ago, some news came out about a potential new Star Trek series following on from Star Trek Enterprise. Showrunner Mike Sussman, who obviously worked on Enterprise, came out with a concept he was looking into about returning to the character of Jonathan Archer, played by Scott Bakula in Enterprise, but his life as Federation President. I've been holding off doing a video on this just until we had a little bit more of an insight as to what this show was all about. And finally we have a few more details as to what Mike Sussman has planned if this new series gets off the ground as part of the new lineup of streaming shows for Star Trek under Skydance management. During the In the Mirror Darkly episode of Enterprise, we saw a bio of Jonathan Archer's career, which included his years as Federation President. And it seems like the concept is to make a new Star Trek series that is like a cross between Star Wars Andor and The West Wing, for example. Paramount was pitched this show a little while ago, but they passed on it for now, I think because it felt a little bit too similar to the Star Trek Starfleet Academy series, which we've already got starting next year. But my impression is that the project has been refined and rejigged a little bit to maybe not be quite so similar to what Starfleet Academy is and be a little bit more of an adult political drama, I suppose, set in the Star Trek universe, as I said, like a West Wing show. We know the title for the show would be Star Trek United, i.e. United Federation of Planets, I guess. And on the basis that Enterprise Season 4 occurred in 2155, with the subsequent founding of the Federation in 2161, this show would take place somewhere between 2184 and 2192 when Archer was UFP President. Quite a bit of time before, say, Pike was born in 2205, and the Enterprise wasn't launched until 2245, with Discovery Season 1 taking place in 2256. The concept of the show would build in a lot of Jonathan Archer's family, so he obviously would be President of the United Federation of Planets. He'd have 4 kids, and they would be involved in the series as well with different divisions of the Starfleet and the Federation. So you might have one of Archer's children being a diplomat, one of them might be in Starfleet, another one, say, could be in Federation intelligence. So it would bring Archer's children into the show in an organic sense in that capacity. Sussman sees this new Star Trek series as maybe a little bit more of a spin-off rather than a sequel to Enterprise, and would probably involve guest stars from Star Trek Enterprise cast members, but possibly not any of those other characters as regular recurring characters, unless, say, you were going to make someone like Jeffrey Combs's Shran character like the equivalent of the Leo McGarry White House Chief of Staff role, and so Archer is President and maybe you'd have Shran as his Chief of Staff or something like that perhaps. That could work, but I don't obviously see any of the other Enterprise cast members coming back in any capacity other than just to pop in and say hi as a guest role, for example. First and foremost, this show would have a largely new cast. One of the other things that Sussman has said about this potential new Star Trek series that I find really interesting is that we would get, as part of this show, some flashbacks to the Romulan War that we never got during Star Trek Enterprise. They obviously planned to cover the Romulan War during Enterprise, but this show was axed before they had a chance to cover that in the series. I think obviously the show was axed after 4 seasons, and the plan was to cover the Romulan War in maybe sort of season 6 or 7. So we would probably see flashbacks to the Romulan War, and some event would happen during the war which would be pivotal in things that are going on 15, 20 years later as part of Star Trek United. They might even introduce a character that was incredibly pivotal in the Romulan War that would be a regular character in Star Trek United. So we would see a lot of the history there that we sort of got deprived of because Enterprise was cancelled too soon. He also has ideas as to logical explanations of things like why we never see any of the Romulans' faces, because obviously that got kept very secret until the original series Balance of Terror episode. That would all happen quite organically and logically as well, which I think is good to explain. And there would perhaps even be some sort of secret undercover things going on, or some intelligence, maybe even sort of Section 31 stuff going on in the shadows. Sussman's even said we might even get a return of Todd Stashwick's Talok, Romulan disguised as a Vulcan undercover routine, which was established in Enterprise perhaps, or things that are going on a lot like this. Maybe the Vulcans know that the Romulans are related to them and they want to keep it all hush-hush, so there's a bit of a cover-up there that doesn't get revealed, and there's sort of secret things going on in the shadows in the background perhaps, which could be quite interesting. So a bit of espionage there sounds like a good ingredient in the recipe. But it definitely seems like that Skydance is looking to expand the Star Trek footprint on streaming services, and Sussman has said this show wouldn't be like a tentpole Star Trek series. It would be a bit like a secondary show, a bit like how Deep Space Nine was secondary to Next Generation while Next Generation was on air. It wasn't the sort of flagship Star Trek series. So he sees this United show as being not the primary Star Trek series on air, but a secondary one. But from past interviews and comments and everything, it definitely seems like Scott Bakula is up for this show. He's keen to support it if it actually got off the ground. I think it does definitely sound intriguing, and it would cover a part of Starfleet and Star Trek's history we haven't really seen too much of, filling in some of the gaps in between Star Trek Enterprise and Star Trek Discovery. And I think providing it was done right, I mean, there's some very good, obviously, parts of Star Wars. Andor was a great series. It got bogged down a little bit and was a little bit slow in places, but I think if you kept that espionage angle and some secret stuff going on in the shadows, and it's got a really good supporting cast and everything, I think it could definitely work. And it'd certainly be fun to revisit characters like Dr. Phlox and Malcolm, Travis, Hoshi, see where they're up to at this particular point in their career, and let's face it, maybe even there might be a chance of some sort of temporal anomaly or something that maybe brings back Trip Tucker, because I always thought that the killing off of that character was a huge misstep on the behalf of the series, so yeah, there was always a bit of hope there maybe in science fiction that you can resurrect fan favourite characters like Trip. And who knows, Jolene Blalock reprised her role as T'Pol in a Lower Decks episode, so never say never, I guess, for a potential return of T'Pol as well. Fingers crossed, you never know, it might happen. But what do you guys think? Are you excited for the prospect of Star Trek United being picked up as a new Star Trek series featuring Scott Bakula in the role of President of the United Federation of Planets? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section and we'll get chatting about that. If you haven't subscribed to Sci Fanatics yet, be sure to do so. Click on that big subscribe button to stay current and up to date with all the latest Star Trek news on YouTube. And be sure to check out my merch store. Plenty of very cool Star Trek themed t-shirts and hoodies and mugs, caps, stickers, coffee mugs, all that sort of stuff to pick up at great discount prices and help support the channel at the same time. I'll be back soon with another video. See you then.